We live in a world that rewards those who can see beyond what's in front of them. The ones who bend reality are not the ones who merely react to it. They are the ones who first imagine something better. Every product you use, every building you walk into, every melody that moves you, all of it, every single thing, was first a picture in someone's mind. The future is built twice, first in your imagination and then in the world. Visualization is not wishful thinking. It is engineering the unseen. The most powerful tool we have isn't in our hands. It's in our heads. When you visualize, you program your brain to look for patterns, paths, and possibilities. It's not magic, it's strategy, it's rehearsal. Athletes do it, innovators do it, leaders do it. Because when you visualize with precision and belief, your brain begins treating your goals as memories that haven't happened yet. And that changes everything. See it before you do it. Feel it before you become it. When you can vividly picture what success looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, you start behaving in alignment with that outcome. Your brain gets to work, quietly closing the gap between the imagined and the real. Without visualization, effort becomes blind. With it, effort becomes focused, almost inevitable. But here's the key: you don't just visualize outcomes, you visualize the process. You imagine the reps, the rejection, the grind. You train yourself for the terrain, not just the summit. That's how you create resilience. Because when your mind has already visited the battlefield, your body shows up ready. The world will offer you distractions, doubt, and data. But none of that will matter if you've already seen what you're building, if you've tasted it, touched it in your thoughts. Vision backed by belief is unstoppable. So close your eyes, picture what you want, not as a daydream, but as a blueprint. Feel it in your bones. Let it burn so bright in your mind that reality has no choice but to catch up. Because the future isn't guessed. It's visualized, and those who learn to do it deliberately, precisely, and passionately, they're the ones who shape what the rest of us will call tomorrow. Everything that exists in the physical world started first as an image in someone's mind. The house you live in, the phone in your pocket, the shoes on your feet, none of these things began with action. They began with imagination. Visualization precedes creation because before any tool is forged, any code is written, or any canvas is painted, someone first saw it clearly in their thoughts. Visualization is not just imagining something in a vague, hopeful sense. It is deliberate, focused, detailed mental rehearsal of a future reality. The blueprint of an idea takes shape in the mind with such clarity and intensity that it starts to gain gravity. The act of seeing it in your mind's eye, with vividness, is the first step to building it in the real world. This isn't about wishful thinking, it's about strategic foresight. You design mentally before you build physically. Creators, innovators, and visionaries consistently use visualization as a foundational step in their process. They see the future so precisely that it becomes more real to them than the present. They're not guessing where they're going. They've already walked the halls of their idea in their minds, the first launch of a product. The look on a customer's face, the reaction of an audience, the obstacles that could appear, the way the solution unfolds, every detail is mentally rehearsed. This clarity allows them to move forward with confidence, not because they know every answer, but because they've already traveled the road in their head. Visualization also acts as a filtration system. When you have a crystal clear image of what you're building, it becomes easier to say no to things that don't align. You stop reacting to distractions because your attention is guided by an internal map. The clearer your mental picture, the easier it becomes to recognize the right paths, the right partnerships, and the right moves. It simplifies decisions. It accelerates progress. Mental imagery also ignites the emotional energy needed to push through difficult moments. When you visualize a future that deeply excites you, you create a reservoir of motivation. That emotional intensity is not trivial. It fuels action. Seeing the reward ahead of time helps you endure the long hours, the setbacks, and the rejections. The mental picture becomes a kind of compass that keeps you going when the terrain gets rough. Neurologically, the brain doesn't make a strong distinction between vivid imagination and reality. The same neural pathways fire when you visualize something intensely as when you experience it firsthand. Athletes use this to rehearse performances. Speakers visualize standing on the stage before they ever step into the spotlight. Entrepreneurs walk through a pitch meeting a dozen times in their head before they enter the room. These mental simulations create preparedness, calm, and a sense of control. Visualization also unlocks creativity. When you're mentally building something that doesn't yet exist, you're naturally forced into a creative state. You begin to ask different questions. What if I try it this way? What would it look like if it were simpler? How can I eliminate that friction point? The mind becomes a laboratory where you experiment without consequence. You iterate in the abstract before committing time, money, or resources. This saves you from costly mistakes, and more importantly, it lets the best version of your idea emerge before you ever take the first step. The strength of visualization lies not only in seeing the result, but in making it feel real. You tap into sensory details. What does the space look like? How does success feel in your body? What sounds do you hear? When you visualize richly, you give your brain the date. It needs to start aligning your behavior toward that outcome. Your subconscious begins searching for resources, connections, and insights that support your vision. This is not mysticism. This is programming. The mind sets a target, and your actions begin to align behind it. People who visualize effectively often make others uncomfortable because they operate from a different kind of certainty. While others wait for proof, they move forward based on internal clarity. They trust what they've already seen in their mind, even when others don't see it yet. That level of belief is magnetic. It attracts collaborators, investors, customers. It creates momentum. The act of visualizing is not a one-time event. It is a daily discipline. You return to the mental image like a builder returning to the blueprint. You refine it, add detail, remove clutter. As your vision sharpens, your steps become more precise. This ongoing mental rehearsal keeps the idea alive and evolving, long before the world catches up to it. When your internal vision becomes more real than your current environment, that's when transformation begins. You stop responding to circumstances and start designing them. You become proactive rather than reactive. You no longer wait for opportunity. You create it because you've already seen where you're going. And once you've seen it, it becomes nearly impossible to turn away from it. Repeated visualization doesn't just offer motivation. It reshapes the brain's neural pathways. The more vividly and frequently you imagine a desired outcome, the more your mind begins to accept it as familiar and attainable. This mental rehearsal influences behavior at a subconscious level, training the brain to respond as if success is already underway. Neural plasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself, responds powerfully to repeated imagery. Just like a muscle, the brain strengthens the pathways it uses most. When those pathways are built on images of success, growth, and execution, your actions begin to align effortlessly with those expectations. Professional athletes don't just practice on the field. They visualize plays, reactions, and results hundreds of times before stepping into the game. Their bodies follow what their minds have already rehearsed. This isn't superstition, it's neuroscience. The brain doesn't distinguish well between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. That means when you visualize speaking to a boardroom, closing a deal, or building your dream product, your nervous system is already preparing for the moment you step into that reality. Visualization, when repeated consistently, builds a mental database of confidence. By seeing yourself perform well under pressure over and over, you condition your mind to believe in that version of yourself. Over time, doubt weakens, limiting beliefs begin to erode. The imagined success becomes not just possible, but expected. Your behavior shifts to match that internal expectation. You show up with more certainty. You take bolder risks. You make sharper decisions because you've already been there in your head hundreds of times. Repetition is the anchor. Visualizing once or twice is a spark, but repetition turns it into fire. Think of it like laying tracks for a train. Each visualization strengthens the route from idea to outcome. Eventually, your mind becomes a high-speed line between where you are and where you intend to go. This creates mental efficiency. You no longer hesitate. You no longer second guess. You start to operate from a place of inner certainty, even when external results haven't arrived yet. When visualization is repeated with strong emotional involvement, the effect is amplified. Emotions act as accelerants. If you imagine a future scenario with deep passion, joy, or pride, those emotional imprints lock into the neural memory. You are not just seeing the future, you are feeling it. That emotional rehearsal becomes a reference point your brain remembers. The more vivid the feeling, the stronger the mental association, and the more committed your subconscious becomes to bridging the gap between imagination and action. This is why people with strong internal vision often seem unshakable. They are anchored in a version of reality that is already playing in their heads like a movie. They felt the handshake, heard the applause, experienced the moment of launch. These aren't distant fantasies. They're internal realities, rehearsed and refined through repetition. The power comes not from the first time they saw it, but from the 100th. Clarity, belief, and urgency compound each time they revisit it. Repetition of visualization also creates pattern recognition. When your brain is trained to look for outcomes aligned with your vision, it begins to notice opportunities and connections that others miss. What looks like luck from the outside is often just preparation meeting pattern. You can't see a door if you haven't trained yourself to look for it. Repeated visualization programs the mind to anticipate possibility, and anticipation is the foundation of strategic action. Visualizing success over and over doesn't just prepare you for the result. It rewires your identity. Identity is at the root of behavior. We act in alignment with who we believe we are. When visualization becomes habitual, you're not just imagining what you want to do. You're training your brain to become the person who does it. Identity shifts from "I hope to be this" to "I already am." That mental transformation changes the questions you ask, the risks you take, and the standards you hold. Even setbacks become less threatening when the vision has been deeply internalized. Challenges are expected, even visualized ahead of time. Because you've already imagined pushing through resistance, the obstacle doesn't feel like the end, it feels like a scene in a movie you've watched dozens of times. There's no panic, just adaptation. The consistency of visualization doesn't have to be grand. Even 2 minutes a day, done with full emotional and sensory engagement, begins to forge new circuits in the brain. Over time, those 2 minutes become the foundation of massive internal change. What begins as mental rehearsal becomes the lens through which you interpret reality. Your brain starts filtering the world through the outcome you've visualized so often that it becomes hard to imagine it not happening. Repetition, done with intention and clarity, doesn't just influence the mind. It reprograms it. Visualization becomes transformative when it shifts from being a passive daydream to an active mental rehearsal. Passive visualization is vague, fleeting, and non-committal. It's when people say they kind of want something or they hope it works out. There's no structure, no consistency, and no emotional engagement. It's a temporary escape rather than a tool for transformation. The mind flirts with a dream but never commits. In contrast, active visualization is focused, disciplined, and richly detailed. It is intentional, structured time spent mentally walking through a future reality with clarity, emotion, and purpose. Active visualization creates an immersive experience. You engage all your senses: sight, sound, touch, even smell and taste. You picture yourself in the room, at the table, on the stage, in the meeting. You feel the weight of success. You notice the light in the room. You hear your own voice delivering the pitch. You feel the energy of the moment. The more detailed the mental simulation, the more your brain begins to process it as a real event, not just a wishful thought. This sensory richness is what separates fantasy from rehearsal. The brain reacts to it, stores it, and starts organizing behavior to match. Structure is what gives active visualization its power. Instead of randomly imagining outcomes, you set specific goals and scenarios. You visualize the process, not just the result. You mentally rehearse each step you need to take: writing the proposal, making the call, handling rejection, adapting strategy. This builds not only confidence, but competence. It's no longer just about envisioning the trophy at the finish line. It's about practicing the race in your head until your body moves as though you've already run it. The practice becomes imprinted. Emotion is the fuel. Active visualization without emotional engagement is like reading a script with no conviction. It lacks intensity. The emotional charge you bring to visualization is what tells your brain this matters. When you feel joy, anticipation, gratitude, pride, or even fear while visualizing, you embed those emotions into the imagined scenario. This emotional layer strengthens the memory trace, increasing the likelihood that your brain will prioritize that goal in the real world. Emotional energy acts like a magnet pulling you toward action. Active visualization also anticipates resistance. You don't just see the success, you see the struggle. You picture the sleepless nights, the failed launches, the difficult conversations. You visualize how you'll respond when things don't go as planned. You prepare mentally for setbacks, and you walk through solutions before they're needed. This builds mental resilience. Instead of being shocked or derailed by obstacles, you've rehearsed your comeback. You've already visualized your response to failure. This mental prep provides a psychological buffer that keeps you grounded under pressure. Consistency converts active visualization into a habit. You make it part of your daily rhythm. Just like brushing your teeth or checking your calendar, visualization becomes a ritual. You revisit your vision at the beginning of your day and again before it ends. This repeated exposure creates familiarity. Familiarity breeds belief, and belief sets the tone for behavior. You don't need hours each day, just focused, undistracted moments where you reconnect to the outcome you're committed to. Daily alignment reinforces the neural pathways that support that vision, making it easier to act with direction. Focus sharpens the impact. When you practice active visualization, you choose one scenario at a time. Scattered thoughts dilute impact. Focused imagination compels the brain to build a detailed map toward a specific goal. Instead of saying, "I want to be successful," you say, "I see myself launching this product, closing this partnership, delivering this keynote." Precision matters. You become the director of your future. You zoom in, you refine the image, you watch it unfold in your mind like a film. Scene by scene, move by move, the mind doesn't just store images, it assigns meaning to them. When you visualize actively, you aren't just constructing a picture, you're reinforcing identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who finishes, who overcomes, who creates. Identity then influences action. When your internal story changes, your external behavior follows. You don't act according to the person you were yesterday. You act according to the person you've been rehearsing today. Active visualization also increases self-accountability. When you've already mentally committed to a version of yourself that executes, delays and distractions become harder to justify. You feel the dissonance between who you're becoming and what you're avoiding. That tension drives action. Avoidance loses its grip because your internal vision doesn't let you settle for inaction. You've seen the future too clearly. You've invested too much in it mentally to betray it physically. When practiced with intention, active visualization creates a roadmap. It becomes both compass and fuel. It doesn't replace hard work, it ignites it. You still need strategy, execution, and resilience. But when those are aligned with a vision rehearsed repeatedly and emotionally, the odds shift. You're no longer guessing your way forward. You're rehearsing it. You're living it internally before you manifest it externally. And that mental rehearsal becomes the blueprint your life begins to follow. Clarity in visualization begins with a well-defined goal. The more specific the vision, the more effective it becomes in shaping behavior and guiding decision making. Ambiguous desires like "I want to be successful" carry no weight compared to sharp declarations such as "I want to launch a mobile design startup that helps small businesses by next March." Clear goals activate specific mental pathways, creating mental blueprints that are easier for the brain to simulate and internalize. The brain seeks clarity because clarity leads to certainty, and certainty creates action. When the mind has a defined destination, it starts filtering reality to support that outcome. It begins to notice opportunities, connections, and patterns that align with the goal. This is not magic. This is the reticular activating system RAS at work, a part of the brain that serves as a filter for what matters. When your vision is clear and rehearsed consistently, the RAS prioritizes information that supports it. You suddenly meet the right person, notice the right article, or have the right idea, not because they weren't there before, but because your brain is now trained to see them. Clarity also creates measurable benchmarks. Without it, progress becomes invisible and motivation weakens. When you visualize with specificity, you generate reference points. You don't just see the end result, you see each milestone. You see the first draft of the pitch, the second iteration of the product, the third round of user testing. These mental benchmarks create a sense of momentum, even before real-world results arrive. They give structure to the path forward and allow you to track whether you're truly advancing toward your goal or simply staying busy. The act of clarifying a vision through visualization reveals weaknesses in your plan. When you mentally simulate the steps to reach your goal, inconsistencies and blind spots surface. Maybe you realize you haven't accounted for funding, or the team you imagined isn't yet assembled. This awareness helps you course-correct early. Instead of learning only through failure in real time, you pre-experience the gaps mentally. This isn't avoidance of risk, it's intelligent rehearsal. The clearer the vision, the more honest the feedback loop in your mind becomes. Mental clarity translates to emotional clarity. When you can clearly see what you want, it's easier to connect to the why behind it. Emotion attaches more powerfully to specific futures. You're not just excited vaguely, you're excited about a day, a lunch, a room full of people reacting to something you built. This emotional anchoring energizes effort. A foggy vision leaves your emotions scattered. A focused vision turns your emotions into jet fuel. It allows you to access drive and discipline when motivation wears off. Visualization with clarity strengthens identity. If you rehearse a future version of yourself with enough consistency and precision, the lines between "I want to be" and "I am" begin to blur. The brain uses imagination to reshape self-perception. Clear visualizations make you believe you are capable, skilled, and worthy, not in the distant future, but now. You begin to act in alignment with that identity. People who walk with certainty are not necessarily more talented. They're often more mentally rehearsed in clarity. Clarity through visualization removes hesitation. When the path is foggy, the mind stalls. Uncertainty triggers fear, and fear delays execution. But when you've already mentally practiced what you'll say, where you'll go, how you'll respond, your brain stops questioning every step. You reduce decision fatigue. You free up energy to focus on the work instead of wasting it on constant doubt. You don't wonder if you're doing the right thing. You act because your internal vision already confirms it. Distractions lose power in the presence of clarity. When your mental image is sharp, your mind naturally filters out the noise. You're less reactive to trends, opinions, and pressure. You don't need external validation when your internal blueprint is vivid and self-directed. Every day becomes a test of alignment. Does this action move me closer to my vision or not? Clarity acts like a magnet that repels unnecessary detours. It forces simplicity, and simplicity accelerates progress. Creative solutions emerge more easily when visualization is clear. The brain becomes more innovative when it's locked onto a specific problem or opportunity. A vague dream doesn't stimulate original thought. But a clear mental picture of the outcome pushes the brain to reverse engineer possibilities. You begin to ask better questions. You see around obstacles. You reframe challenges as part of the narrative you've already envisioned. Clarity doesn't just show you what to do, it shows you how to think. Clear visualization also strengthens communication. When you're clear on your vision, others feel it. You don't just speak with passion, you speak with precision. That precision builds trust. Whether it's a team, a client, or an investor, people don't buy into fuzzy enthusiasm. They buy into articulated confidence. When you can describe your future clearly, it signals that you've already spent time living there mentally. That mental residency gives you authority even before the external results appear. In a world full of complexity, clarity becomes a competitive edge. Most people are stuck in loops of indecision, vague ambition, or reactive behavior. Clear visualization breaks the loop. It moves you from passive hope to active intention. It builds a sense of inevitability. You stop trying to guess your way forward and start rehearsing it. The clearer the vision, the more aligned your mindset, habits, and strategy become. And alignment is the foundation of high performance. The subconscious mind does not differentiate between what is vividly imagined and what is real. When you repeatedly visualize a specific outcome, the brain processes that image as if it's a lived experience. Over time, this repetition begins to alter how the subconscious mind interprets the world, making the envisioned future feel not only possible, but expected. This sense of expectation builds psychological certainty. which translates into greater confidence and action in real life. Repetition creates familiarity, and the mind tends to follow what feels familiar. What starts as mental imagery slowly becomes a new mental norm. Every repeated visualization reinforces neural pathways, a process known in neuroscience as neuroplasticity. Each time you mentally rehearse a goal, whether it's delivering a keynote, executing a product launch, or reaching a personal milestone, you are literally rewiring your brain. These circuits become more efficient, faster, and stronger. Just as muscles grow with physical repetition, your mindset strengthens with cognitive repetition. The more you rehearse success, the more natural it becomes to behave in ways that reflect that success. Your decisions, actions, and habits begin to align with the version of you that already exists in your mind. The subconscious mind governs the vast majority of human behavior, our habits, emotional responses, fears, and motivations. When visualization becomes repetitive, it starts bypassing the conscious mind and embeds itself deeper into the subconscious. Over time, this repeated imagery can override limiting beliefs, past failures, or inherited mental scripts. For example, someone who once believed they were not a leader can recondition that belief by repeatedly visualizing themselves giving instructions, inspiring teams, and handling challenges with calm authority. Eventually, the subconscious stops resisting that new identity because it has been fed the same image too many times to ignore. Repetition strengthens emotional associations. When you visualize a goal once, it may feel inspiring for a moment, but that emotion fades. When you visualize it daily, emotion fuses with intention. You begin to feel a sense of ownership over a result you haven't yet achieved. This emotional ownership is powerful. It creates urgency, passion, and resilience. A person emotionally connected to their goal is less likely to quit when things go wrong. They don't just want it, they expect it. That expectation creates a gravitational pull that brings the vision closer with each action taken. Consistency in visualization also builds discipline in other areas. When you commit to the mental habit of seeing your future repeatedly, you develop a pattern of follow-through. That discipline echoes in how you work, how you prioritize, and how you respond to distraction. Repeating the same vision over time conditions you to act in harmony with it. You're more likely to say no to things that don't align and yes to things that do. Every choice becomes part of a larger pattern shaped by the vision you've been training your mind to accept. Visualization repetition has a cumulative effect. One session of visualizing a goal may increase motivation, but daily repetition embeds it into your identity. You stop seeing the vision as a distant dream and begin behaving as though it's already unfolding. This mindset shift has immediate behavioral consequences. People who see themselves as healthy eat differently. People who see themselves as creative approach problems differently. People who see themselves as successful communicate differently. The outer world begins to shift because the inner world has already changed. The repetition of visualization also reduces psychological resistance. The first time you imagine achieving a bold goal, your mind may push back. Doubt surfaces, fear questions it, but repetition weakens this resistance. When your subconscious is constantly fed the same vision, it stops treating it as a threat. What once triggered anxiety becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes accepted. Over time, the fear of acting disappears because the act has already been practiced so many times in your mind. The internal opposition softens and momentum builds naturally. Mental rehearsal creates behavioral consistency. Athletes do this. Pilots do this. Performers do this. They all mentally repeat success until the real moment feels like déjà vu. The same principle applies to any domain: business, relationships, health, or creativity. When you've already practiced success mentally 100 times, the real-life execution feels like a continuation, not a risk. This sense of preparation boosts accuracy, timing, and flow. Your responses are faster, your presence is sharper, and your results are more consistent, not because of talent, but because of practiced belief. Repetition of visualization creates alignment between thought, emotion, and behavior. When those three forces are aligned, action becomes effortless. You no longer need willpower to get started. You no longer need external reminders to stay on track. The vision becomes the internal compass. It pulls you forward even when motivation fades. Repetition turns effort into instinct, and instinct into achievement. What was once foreign becomes second nature, and what was once a vision becomes a lived reality shaped by the consistency of imagination.